Chapter 1. The death that set me free. The hospital rooms smelled of antiseptic and decay. I lay in that narrow bed, my body reduced to nothing but skin stretched over bones, and watched the ceiling fan make its endless, useless rotations. 50 years old. 50 years I had given to that man, and what did I have to show for it? A passbook with nothing in it. A house that wasn't mine. A womb that had never carried a child because he didn't want one. And now, cancer eating away at what little remained of me. The discovery had come 3 weeks earlier, when I'd asked the nurse to retrieve my passbook from home so I could pay for the next round of treatment. She'd returned empty-handed, her face twisted with embarrassment. Mrs. Chen, I couldn't find it anywhere. Perhaps your husband moved it. Ethan. Of course. I dragged my dying body to the bank myself, leaning on walls, stopping every few steps to catch my breath. The clerk had pulled up my account with practiced efficiency. Then her expression shifted, that particular blend of pity and discomfort I'd grown accustomed to seeing. Mrs. Chen, there have been regular transfers over the past 15 years. Large sums, always to the same account. She turned the screen toward me. A MS. Mia Zhang. Mia. His first love. The woman he'd claimed was nothing more than a childhood friend. The woman whose name he'd whispered in his sleep on our wedding night while I lay beside him, pretending not to hear. I didn't cry then. The tears would come later, alone in that hospital room. Instead, I'd gone home. Our home, the one I'd helped pay for with my inheritance, and searched for the deed. Gone. I checked every drawer, every folder, every hiding place I could think of. Nothing. The county records office confirmed what my heart already knew. The house had been transferred to Mia Zhang's name 3 years ago. My signature was on the documents. A forgery, obviously, but what strength did a dying woman have to fight? When I confronted him that evening, he didn't even look up from his newspaper. I already married you. What more do you want? The words hung in the air like smoke. I stared at this stranger in my husband's clothes. The custom-tailored suit I'd paid for, the leather shoes I'd bought him for our anniversary, the gold watch on his wrist that had cost me 3 months of savings. You're just too greedy, Emily. You always have been. Greedy. He called me greedy. I, who had poured every yuan of my parents' inheritance into his first business venture. I, who had worked 16-hour days in that tiny shop while he managed the accounts from home. I, who had helped him become the first 10,000 yuan household in our village, only to watch him transfer that wealth to another woman and her child. The child I was never allowed to have. Does she make you happy? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Mia, that got his attention. The newspaper lowered. His eyes, those same eyes I'd once thought held all the warmth in the world, narrowed with suspicion. What are you talking about? I know everything, Ethan. The transfers. The house. The child. A long silence. Then he shrugged, returning to his paper. You're sick. The medication is making you paranoid. Go back to the hospital, Emily. I'll visit when I can. He never visited again. I died alone, 3 weeks later, with nothing but resentment burning in my chest. The nurses found me in the morning, my eyes still open, staring at the door that never opened. My last thought was a curse. If I could do it all over again, I would never choose you. Chapter 2. The fountain pen. Someone shoved me. Hard. I stumbled forward, my feet tangling beneath me, and nearly crashed face first into the dirt road. The world spun, colors too bright, sounds too sharp, the smell of earth and livestock flooding my senses all at once. Emily, I told you I don't like you. Stop giving me things. That voice. I knew that voice better than my own heartbeat. It had been the soundtrack of my ruin, the melody of my destruction. Ethan, I don't want people to misunderstand our relationship. You trail after me all day. Don't you even know what modesty and self-respect are? I steadied myself, pressing my palm against the rough bark of a roadside tree, and looked up. There he stood. Ethan, not the suited businessman I remembered, not the middle-aged man who had dismissed my dying words with a shrug. This was Ethan in his 20s, sharp jaw, proud shoulders, and clothes so worn they'd been patched in 3 different places. Faded blue cotton, a tear at the knee poorly mended, Threadbare cuffs. The educated youth from the city come to our humble village to learn from the peasants. I looked down at my hands. Young hands. Smooth, unblemished by decades of work and worry. In my right palm, I held a fountain pen, a Shanghai brand, sleek and expensive. I remembered this pen. I'd saved for months to buy it, eating nothing but rice porridge so I could afford something worthy of him. This was the day I'd first declared my feelings with a gift, and he'd accepted it while sneering at me behind my back. I had been reborn. The realization hit me like ice water. My heart hammered against my ribs. My breath caught in my throat. Everything, the dusty village road, the distant sound of roosters, the weight of the pen in my hand, it was all exactly as it had been 28 years ago. Are you deaf? Ethan's voice cut through my shock. I said I'll reluctantly accept this gift. I'll forgive you this time, but don't bother me again. Don't you get it? He reached for the pen. I watched his fingers stretch toward it. Those same fingers that had forged my signature on the deed, that had written checks to Mia while I wasted away, that had never once touched me with genuine tenderness in all our years of marriage. Just before his skin met the metal, I whipped my hand back and slipped the pen into my pocket. If you don't like it, then don't take it. My voice came out steady, though my heart was racing. No need to force yourself. The words tasted like freedom. In my last life, Ethan had accepted this pen with theatrical reluctance, then complained for weeks that my gifts disgusted him. Yet he'd used that very pen every single day, signing documents, writing letters, showing it off to the other educated youths. They'd seen its value and assumed he came from a wealthy city family. It had fed his vanity like nothing else could. And I, foolish, blind, desperate Emily, had thought his complaints were just shyness. I'd thought he secretly liked me, but was too proud to show it. So I'd brought him more gifts. Expensive ones. A leather satchel. Imported cigarettes. A wool scarf for winter. He'd accepted every single one, never once saying thank you. Ethan's hand hung in the air, frozen mid-reach. His expression flickered. Confusion, then irritation, then something almost like panic. You're playing hard to get, he muttered. I laughed. A real laugh, sharp and bitter, born from the memory of my own corpse lying in that hospital bed. You're overthinking it. I just realized I don't like you anymore. I turned to leave, my feet carrying me away from him for the first time in 2 lifetimes. Don't worry. I won't bother you again. Wait! His hand closed around my arm. His grip was firm, almost desperate, and his eyes darted to the pocket where I'd hidden the pen. Emily, I was too harsh earlier. That was my fault. His voice softened, took on that coaxing tone I remembered so well, the one that always made me forgive him. It's just that we haven't known each other long, and you keep following me every day. It doesn't look good for either of us. I stared at his hand on my arm. In my last life, this touch would have sent butterflies through my stomach. Now it just made my skin crawl. Ethan, the voice came from down the road. Sweet. Delicate. Poison wrapped in silk. Mia appeared at the corner, her dark hair pinned perfectly, her dress neat and pressed despite the village dust. She moved with the grace of someone who knew she was being watched. The team leader's been looking for you everywhere, she called, her eyes fixed on where Ethan's hand gripped my arm. He dropped me like I'd burned him. Stepped back, put distance between us, as if I were contaminated. Mia, the tips of his ears turned red. Emily keeps forcing gifts on me. I've rejected her so many times, but she's been clinging to me these days. I can't get rid of her. I watched the performance with new eyes. The way he positioned himself, angled toward Mia, away from me. The way his voice changed, becoming more refined, more city. The way his hands smoothed his patched clothes as if they were silk. Mia walked over, every step measured. She looked at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Ethan, you're a man. You don't understand girls. Her voice dripped with false sweetness. Let me talk to Emily. The team leader needs you urgently. You should go. Ethan nodded, shot me a warning glare. Don't you dare say anything, and hurried away. Mia waited until he was out of earshot. Then her smile sharpened. Emily, Ethan will definitely go back to the city one day. He won't stay here for you. She tilted her head, studying me like I was a bug under glass. Don't waste your time on him. In my past life, I'd missed the subtext entirely. I'd thought she was kindly advising me, looking out for my best interests. I'd even thanked her for the warning. Now I understood exactly what she was saying. He's mine. Back off, village girl. Don't worry, I said, matching her sweet tone. I don't like him. Her eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected that. I really don't. I continued, brushing dust off my sleeve. So you can relax. He's all yours. Before she could respond, I walked away, my footsteps firm on the dirt road. Behind me, I heard Ethan's voice call out. He must have been watching from somewhere nearby. Emily, you better mean what you said. I didn't look back. Chapter 3. The theft. I returned to the factory and changed into my work clothes. The familiar weight of the coarse cotton fabric, the smell of machine oil, the rhythmic clatter of looms. It all came rushing back like a half-remembered dream. My hands moved automatically, muscle memory from a lifetime ago, guiding me through the afternoon shift. But my mind was elsewhere. Planning, calculating, remembering. In my last life, I had given everything to Ethan. My money, my youth, my future. And he had taken it all, used it to build a life with another woman, and left me to die alone. This time, I would give him nothing. When the shift ended, I reached into my pocket for the fountain pen and found nothing. Empty. I searched my locker. Twice. 3 times. Checked the floor, the changing room, every surface I might have touched. Nothing. The pen was gone. Emily, what are you looking for? Sister Zhang, my coworker, watched me with curiosity. She was a plump woman in her 40s, kind-faced and gossip-hungry. A pen. Shanghai brand. Silver cap. Oh, that fancy one. Her face brightened with recognition. That young man you like, Ethan, he came by to see you this afternoon. You were on the floor and couldn't leave your station, so I let him get something from your locker. He said you told him he could borrow it. The blood in my veins turned to ice. He took it from my locker. Well, yes. Is something wrong? I mean, everyone knows you're sweet on him, so I assumed. She trailed off, seeing my expression. I didn't answer. I was already walking, my pace quickening with each step. The factory, the village road, the path to the educated youth's quarters. My feet knew the way by heart. I'd walked it hundreds of times in my last life, always carrying some gift or treat for Ethan. This time, I walked it carrying nothing but rage. I didn't go alone. I stopped at the village office first and asked several officials to accompany me. There's been a theft, I said calmly. I need witnesses. They came, curious and concerned. A village girl accusing an educated youth of theft. This was unusual enough to draw attention. We found Ethan at his desk, carefully practicing calligraphy, with my fountain pen. The silver cap gleamed under the lamplight. His strokes were precise, deliberate, the characters forming beautifully on the page. He looked up as we entered, and for a moment, I saw genuine surprise in his eyes. Then his face smoothed into practiced innocence. Ethan, one of the cotters, stepped forward. We received a report that you stole Emily's pen. Stole? He actually had the audacity to look shocked. I didn't steal anything. She insisted on giving it to me, practically forced it into my hands. My eyes moved from the pen to his face. I kept my voice level. When did I ever give it to you? This afternoon. You came to find me. I came to find you. I cut him off. I was at the factory all afternoon. Working. You came to my locker, opened it without permission, and took the pen from my work clothes. His jaw tightened. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. So what if I rejected your advances? His voice rose, taking on an injured tone. Does that give you the right to slander me? Don't let love turn into hate, Emily. I can't afford that kind of reputation damage. The village officials shifted uncomfortably, looking between us. I could see the doubt in their eyes. Everyone in the village knew how I'd chased after Ethan, how I'd brought him gifts, made him food, followed him around like a lost puppy. It wasn't hard to believe. I might have given him the pen and then regretted it. Ethan, my voice was cold now, stripped of all emotion. What exactly is our relationship? He didn't hesitate. "Emily, I've told you repeatedly, I don't like you. We have no relationship. I barely tolerate your presence." The words were meant to humiliate me, to remind me of my place, to make the officials see that I was the problem, not him. I smiled. "If you don't like me," I said slowly, "then why did you accept every single gift I've ever given you? The cigarettes, the leather satchel, the wool scarf, the imported tea, the calligraphy brushes, always pretending you had no choice, yet using them so conveniently." I stepped forward and snatched the pen from his hand. He tried to grab it back, but I was faster. "Since you've rejected me so firmly, you should return everything I've given you." I looked around his small room, at the desk, the chair, the bookshelf. "That way, no one can say you're living off a woman." His face went pale, then flushed red. "Emily, don't be unreasonable." I didn't let him finish. I started with the bookshelf, pulling down the leather-bound journal I'd bought him for his birthday. Then the ink set, the brass letter opener, the ceramic cup he drank tea from every morning. Each item a memory of my foolish devotion, now reclaimed. The pile grew. A wool scarf, 2 packs of imported cigarettes, unopened, a set of calligraphy, brushes with jade handles, a tin of expensive tea leaves. The village officials watched in stunned silence as I stripped his room of every luxury. These were things he could never have afforded on his own. His family was poor, his stipend meager. Without my gifts, his life in the village would be stark indeed. When I finished, the pile was so large I couldn't carry it all. One of the cotters had to help me haul everything out. Ethan stood frozen, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. "You'll regret this," he hissed as I passed him. I paused at the doorway and looked back. His expression flickered. Was that hope? Did he think I was having second thoughts? "Why go to all this trouble?" he said, forcing a sigh. "Even if I reject you now, we can still be friends." I walked right past him. "The chair," I said, pointing to the one at his desk. "It's mine. Your old one broke last month, so you took this from my house without asking." I picked it up myself. It was solid wood, heavy, and carried it out the door. Behind me, I heard one of the officials mutter, "Well, that was something." Chapter 4, A New Beginning. I sold everything. The fountain pen, the leather goods, the tea set, the calligraphy brushes. All of it went to a second-hand dealer in the next town over. I didn't get nearly what I'd paid, but I didn't care. The money joined the small inheritance my parents had left me before they passed. Precious savings I'd guarded carefully in my last life, until Ethan had convinced me to invest it in his business. Now, counting the worn bills and coins spread across my bed, I had exactly 1,000 yuan. In my last life, this money had been the seed that grew into Ethan's empire. He'd taken it, used my labor, my ideas, my sacrifices, and built a company that bore his name alone. I'd been the invisible foundation, the uncredited partner, the wife who didn't need to worry her pretty head about business. This time, the money would grow for me alone. I knew what was coming. The next few decades would transform our nation's economy in ways most people couldn't yet imagine. Factories would rise. Cities would expand. Opportunities would bloom like spring flowers for those bold enough to seize them. I had been bold once, but I'd given all the fruits of my boldness to a man who'd never deserved them. Never again. The next morning, I handed in my resignation at the factory. Sister Zhang tried to talk me out of it. "Emily, you're throwing away a stable job. What will you do? Where will you go?" "I'm going to the city," I said. "To start a business." Her eyes went wide. "A business? You? A young woman alone?" "Yes." I smiled, and for the first time since my rebirth it felt genuine. "Me? Alone?" Our village was remote, 6 hours by bus to reach the nearest city, and the bus only ran on weekends. I had 3 days to wait before I could leave. 3 days to say goodbye to the only home I'd ever known. Chapter 5. Movie night Wednesday evening, the village square filled with people carrying stools and chairs. It was movie night, a rare entertainment in our rural life, and everyone attended. The screen was a white sheet strung between 2 poles, the projector an ancient machine that sputtered and flickered but somehow always worked. I found a spot near the back, away from the crowd, and settled in to watch. The film was a romantic drama, ironic, given my circumstances. I let my mind drift, planning my next moves in the city, calculating costs and possibilities. I was so absorbed that I didn't notice him until I felt something press into my palm. Candy. A single piece, wrapped in crinkled cellophane. I looked up. Ethan had slipped into the seat beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. Still sulking with me. His voice was low, intimate, as if we shared a secret. Here. I saved this for you. I stared at the candy. In my last life, this small gesture would have made my heart soar. I would have treasured that candy, saved the wrapper, seen it as proof that he truly cared beneath his cold exterior. Now I just saw manipulation. I tossed the candy back at him. Comrade Ethan, we're not exactly close, are we? You'd better stay away from me. It wouldn't be good if Mia misunderstood. He caught it, unperturbed. Instead of leaving, he leaned closer. Emily, I know you're just throwing a tantrum. His breath was warm against my ear. How about this? If you buy me a Phoenix brand bicycle, I'll consider being with you. A Phoenix bicycle. Nearly 200 yuan. 1/5 of my entire inheritance. In my last life, I had bought him that bicycle. I'd scrimped and saved, eaten one meal a day, worn my clothes until they fell apart, all to afford a gift that would make him smile. And after I gave it to him, there was never a place for me on it. The back seat was always reserved for Mia. I could see them now in my memory. Ethan pedaling through the village, Mia perched behind him, her arms wrapped around his waist, both of them laughing. And me watching from the roadside, telling myself that it meant nothing, that they were just friends, that he would come back to me eventually. I raised my voice, loud enough for the surrounding villagers to hear. Comrade Ethan, I'm really not interested in you. Stop pestering me. Heads turned. The movie forgotten. If you want a bicycle so badly, I continued, earn the money yourself through your own labor. Instead of scheming after a girl's money. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the projector seemed to quiet. Ethan's face went through several colors. White, red, purple. He scrambled to his feet, looking around at the watching eyes. Emily stopped talking nonsense. His voice cracked. You're the one who's been chasing me. Everyone knows you've been clinging to me like a leech. Who said anything about you buying me a bicycle? You misheard. I said I was buying one myself and that you weren't allowed to ride it. I laughed. Then I'll look forward to seeing this bicycle of yours. Whispers rippled through the crowd. A Phoenix bicycle costs nearly 200 yuan. Ethan really must have some means. Didn't you hear? His family in the city is supposed to be wealthy. He's been saying that, but have we ever seen any evidence? Ethan's face darkened further. I stood, brushed off my clothes, and walked away into the night. Chapter 6. The bicycle that never came word spreads fast in a village. By morning, everyone knew about my confrontation with Ethan at the movie. And everyone was curious about his promised bicycle. I didn't let the opportunity pass. Have you heard? I asked the women gathered at the well. Ethan's buying a Phoenix bicycle. We should all go see it when it arrives. Really? A Phoenix? That's what he said last night. In front of everyone. I moved through the village like a gentle wind, planting seeds of expectation. By afternoon, the whole village was buzzing with anticipation. When would the bicycle arrive? What color would it be? How could a poor, educated youth afford such a thing? The next day, I rallied a group of villagers and led them to the educated youth's quarters. Ethan, I called cheerfully. Everyone wants to see your new bicycle. He came to the door, and I watched his face drain of color. Behind him, I could see into his sparse room. No bicycle. Of course, there was no bicycle. There had never been money for a bicycle. He swallowed hard. I thought it over all night and decided not to buy a bicycle. Murmurs of disappointment rippled through the crowd. I can't set myself apart from everyone else. He continued, his voice gaining strength as he found his footing. I came here to work with you all, to build the countryside together, not to enjoy luxuries. We need to embrace the spirit of hard work. Endure hardship for a better future. It was a good speech. Noble. Self-sacrificing. Several villagers nodded approvingly. their disappointment transforming into respect. Then Ethan turned to me, and his eyes hardened. Emily, you spend money recklessly. You throw away the spirit of hardship and endurance. You have none of the qualities of a true young pioneer. He lifted his chin. I suggest you entrust your money to me before you completely ruin yourself. Ah, there it was. His real goal, spoken aloud for everyone to hear. I smiled sweetly. You're right, Ethan. Your awareness is so noble. Truly inspiring. I turned to the crowd. Everyone in the village should hand their money over to him. Let him lead us all in suffering together. A beat of silence. Then laughter, scattered at first, then spreading. Several villagers snorted, covering their mouths. Even one of the older cotters chuckled. Ethan's face contorted with fury. Emily, don't come to regret this. Oh, I won't. I turned and walked away, the laughter following me like music. Later, I heard that Mia had been furious about the bicycle that never materialized. She'd ignored Ethan for 3 days, and he'd blamed me for his humiliation. Every time our paths crossed after that, he glared at me with undisguised hatred. I smiled every time. Chapter 7. The torn shirt. The day before I was set to leave for the city, I went to the small shop at the village entrance. I bought gifts, candy, cigarettes, small luxuries, for all the neighbors who had shown me kindness since my parents' death. In my last life, I'd been so focused on Ethan that I'd barely noticed the people who actually cared about me. The widow next door who brought me soup when I was sick. The elderly couple who invited me for New Year's dinner so I wouldn't be alone. The factory workers who covered my shifts when I was too exhausted to stand. This time, I would remember. My arms were full of packages when I rounded the corner and nearly collided with Ethan. He was returning from the fields, his clothes dusty with a day's labor. His eyes went straight to the gifts in my arms. And he smiled, that condescending, knowing smile that made my blood boil. Emily, don't think that just because you're giving me something, I'll forgive your unreasonable behavior. He straightened his worn collar. Before, when I thought your pursuit of me was sincere, I might have considered marrying you. But now, I'd never marry a village woman like you. I set the packages carefully on the ground. Then I reached out and grabbed his shirt. What are you? I pulled. Hard. The cheap fabric, already thin from years of wear, tore with a satisfying rip. Threads snapped. Seams parted. The shirt split from collar to hem, leaving Ethan standing in the road with his chest exposed. Emily, he clutched at the remains of his shirt, his face scarlet. What are you doing in broad daylight? Have you lost your mind? If you look down on me as just some village woman, I said, my voice cold and clear, then stop wearing clothes I made for you. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. I know you've always despised me, I continued. Thought I was a country bumpkin. Beneath your city dignity. If it weren't for the things I kept giving you, you wouldn't have bothered to say a single word to me. Deep down, you've always looked down on me, but you've been greedy for my money at the same time. That's not. Even if you married me in the end, it would have been only for my money. I let the torn fabric fall from my fingers. Ethan, there are plenty of men in this world. I don't need you. But you can't keep taking my things while spitting on me behind my back. That's not how a decent person behaves. His face was a mask of humiliation. Villagers had stopped to watch. There were always people on the village road, and their stares pressed in from all sides. Emily, don't talk nonsense. His voice was strangled. What money have I ever taken from you? I don't want to argue with you. I bent to gather my packages. You know perfectly well what's in your heart. You don't need to explain to me. I stepped past him, close enough to see the pulse jumping in his throat, close enough to smell the sweat and dirt on his skin. The shirt I'd torn was one I'd sewn myself, 3 months ago, staying up late by lamplight to finish it before his birthday. I'd embroidered his initials on the inside collar, EC, with thread that matched the blue cotton. I wondered if he'd ever even noticed. Chapter 8. Goodbye to the village. I delivered the gifts one by one. To the widow next door, who had held my hand at my parents' funeral, a warm scarf and a tin of good tea. To the elderly couple who fed me on holidays, a bottle of rice wine and a smoked ham. To Sister Zhang at the factory, A set of nice hair clips and a heartfelt apology for leaving so suddenly. To each person who had shown me kindness, I gave something in return, along with my genuine gratitude. That night, I packed my bag. A few changes of clothes. My parents' photograph. The 1,000 yuan, sewn into a hidden pocket in my jacket. And the Shanghai fountain pen. I'd decided to keep it after all, not as a reminder of Ethan, but as a symbol of my own reclaimed power. I went to bed early and lay in the darkness, listening to the familiar sounds of the village settling into night. Crickets, a distant dog barking, the wind through the eaves. Tomorrow, everything would change. At dawn, I boarded the long-distance bus. It was old and rattling, with hard wooden seats and windows that didn't quite close. The other passengers were mostly farmers heading to the city to sell goods. Chickens in cages, vegetables in baskets, children in laps. As the bus pulled away from the village, I pressed my face to the cold glass and watched my old life disappear. The thatched roofs, the dirt roads, the fields where I'd worked since I was old enough to hold a hoe. The tears came then, hot and sudden. I let them fall. This was goodbye. Not just to the village, but to the girl I had been. The girl who had loved a man who never loved her back. The girl who had given everything and received nothing. The girl who had died alone, full of resentment, with nothing to show for 50 years of life. That girl was gone. The woman in her place was someone new. Chapter 9, the city 6 hours. That's how long it took to reach the city center, bouncing over unpaved roads, stopping at every small town along the way. By the time we arrived, my back ached and my legs were stiff, but my mind was sharp with purpose. The city was overwhelming. Buildings taller than any I'd seen. Streets crowded with bicycles and pedestrians. The noise, vendors shouting, horns honking, machinery rumbling, pressed in from all sides. In my last life, I'd come here with Ethan, clinging to his arm, letting him navigate while I followed meekly behind. This time, I was alone. And I was not afraid. I found a small hotel, really just a room above a noodle shop, and paid for a week in advance. The owner, a round woman with kind eyes, showed me to a tiny room with a narrow bed and a window overlooking the alley. "It's not much," she apologized. "It's perfect," I said, and meant it. That night, I lay in the unfamiliar bed and made my plans. In my last life, Ethan and I had started with clothing. It was what I knew best. I'd spent decades in the business, learning every aspect from sourcing to sales. I knew which styles would sell, which fabrics would last, which prices would attract customers without sacrificing profit. The coming years would bring tremendous changes. Urbanization, economic reform, a new generation of young people with money to spend, and a hunger for fashion. I had watched it happen once. I could navigate it again, better this time, without Ethan's dead weight holding me back. The next morning, I began my search. I walked the city for 3 days, studying every commercial street, every market, every cluster of shops. I watched where people gathered, what they bought, what they looked at but couldn't afford. I noted which areas were growing, which were declining, which had the right mix of foot traffic and affordable rent. On the 4th day, I found it. A small storefront on the busiest pedestrian street in the city. The previous tenant had sold shoes and gone bankrupt. The space was dusty and neglected, but the location was perfect, surrounded by other shops, near a bus stop, on a street where young people like to stroll and see and be seen. I negotiated the rent with the landlord, a shrewd old man who clearly thought I was too young and too female to succeed. 3 months in advance, he demanded, expecting me to back down. I counted out the money on his desk. 6 months, I said, and I want the first month free for renovations. He blinked. Then he laughed. "You drive a hard bargain, young lady. I learned from the best." I didn't tell him the best was a lifetime of hard experience. With the lease signed, I threw myself into renovations. I painted the walls myself, a soft cream that would make the clothes stand out. I found a carpenter to build simple but elegant displays. I scoured second-hand markets for a counter, a mirror, a few chairs for customers to rest. Every yuan was spent carefully. Every decision was mine alone. When the shop was ready, I took the train to the port. 12 hours each way, crammed into hard seats with merchants and travelers. The port was chaos, a maze of warehouses and wholesalers, shouting vendors and haggling buyers, crates of goods from everywhere imaginable. I moved through it with purpose. I knew what I was looking for. Women's fashion that was stylish but not extreme, well-made but affordable. The port had clothes that couldn't be found in our small city, cuts and colors and fabrics that would make my shop stand out. I spent 2 days selecting my first inventory. Dresses with clean lines, blouses with interesting details, skirts in lengths that were modern but still modest. I bought carefully, negotiating hard, walking away when prices were too high, returning when vendors became more reasonable. On the train back, surrounded by my purchases, I allowed myself a small smile. This was the beginning. Chapter 10, Emily's Fashion. I named the store Emily's Fashion. Simple. Direct. My name on something that belonged entirely to me. The concept was straightforward. Every outfit sold as a complete set. No confusion about what matched what. No need for customers to imagine how pieces might work together. I created displays showing full looks, dress with appropriate shoes, blouse with coordinating skirt, accessories that completed the ensemble. Women loved it. The first day, the crowd nearly broke the door. Young women streamed in, eyes wide, hands reaching for the displayed outfits. They didn't just buy one piece. They bought the whole set, grateful that someone had done the thinking for them. This is so fashionable. I would never have thought to put these together. I'll take the whole outfit, shoes too. By closing time, my inventory was nearly depleted. I sat on the floor of my empty shop, surrounded by receipts and cash, and laughed until tears ran down my face. This was what success felt like. Not success built on someone else's labor, claimed by someone else's name. My success, earned by my work, my vision, my sacrifice. I hired a shop assistant, a bright young woman named May who had come in as a customer and stayed to ask if I needed help. She was quick, honest, and had an eye for style. Together, we managed the crowds. Twice a month, I traveled to the port to restock. Each trip was exhausting. Long hours on hard trains, negotiating with stubborn vendors, hauling heavy bundles through crowded stations. But each trip also brought new discoveries, new styles, new opportunities. And each trip brought me back to a shop that was thriving. After 2 months, I sat down with my account book and counted. The numbers made me dizzy. I counted again, sure I'd made a mistake. I hadn't. The profit was more than I'd earned in a year at the factory. More than I'd ever held in my hands at one time. I paid May her wages and added a bonus. She stared at the extra money, then at me, her eyes filling with tears. Emily, this is too much. You earned it. I pressed the bills into her hands. We succeed together. That night, alone in my small apartment above the shop, I spread the money across my bed and just looked at it. Not with greed, but with wonder. In my last life, Ethan had always controlled the finances. I'd worked alongside him, built the business with him, but I'd never once held the profits in my own hands. I'd never known exactly how much we were making, never had the power to decide how it was spent. Now I knew. Now I decided. I laughed out loud, the sound echoing in the empty room. So this was what freedom felt like. This was what it meant to hold wealth in your own grip, earned by your own labor. It was intoxicating. Chapter 11, Mia's Boutique. Emily. Emily. May's voice reached me before I'd even stepped through the door. I'd just returned from the port, arms aching from carrying new stock, and her face told me something was wrong. What is it? A new store opened across the street. She pointed through our front window. Mia's Boutique. The name hit me like a physical blow. Mia. I set down my bundles and walked to the window. Across the pedestrian street, a new shop gleamed with fresh paint. The sign was elegant, gold lettering on a dark background. Through the windows, I could see racks of clothing, displays arranged much like mine. And there, moving behind the counter, were 2 familiar figures. Ethan. Mia. They were here. Their prices are half of ours. May continued, her voice tight with worry. Even our regular customers are going there. They came in this morning, bought a few things, and said they probably wouldn't be back because Mia's is so much cheaper. Half price. For clothing that looked identical to mine. My mind raced. I knew my costs. I was buying at port wholesale, negotiating aggressively, keeping margins as thin as possible while still making profit. There was no way they could sell the same quality at half my price and stay in business, unless the quality wasn't the same. May, I said slowly, I need you to do something for me. The dress May brought back from Mia's boutique looked identical to one of my bestsellers. Same cut, same pattern, same color. But when I laid it beside my version, the differences were glaring. Mia's dress was made of cheap fabric, thin, scratchy, with a chemical smell that made my nose burn. The stitching was uneven, loose in places, already pulling apart at the seams. The hem was crooked. The buttons were plastic instead of mother of pearl. I held it up to the light and could see straight through the fabric. Where did they get this? May asked, horrified. And then I remembered. In my last life, there had been an illegal factory inland. They churned out imitation clothing, copies of popular styles, updated quickly, priced impossibly low. Many shopkeepers had abandoned legitimate suppliers to buy from them, seduced by the profit margins. I had been tempted too, but I'd examined samples and found the quality appalling. I'd walked away. Others hadn't. And when the quality problems became impossible to ignore, when clothes fell apart after one washing, when dyes bled onto skin, when seams split at the slightest movement, angry customers had swarmed the shops demanding refunds. The factory owners had fled in the night, leaving merchants with unsellable inventory and empty bank accounts. Several stores had gone bankrupt. Ethan, who had only ever handled money and never understood the products themselves, wouldn't remember this. He thought he could simply replicate what we'd done in our last life, without understanding what had made it work. I smiled. What? May asked nervously. Why are you smiling like that? No reason. I folded the cheap dress carefully. Let's just wait and see. Chapter 12, The Collapse 3 Days. That's how long it took. On the third morning after Mia's boutique opened, I was arranging a new window display when I heard the shouting. May ran to the door, then came back breathless. Emily, something's happening across the street. There's a crowd. They're all yelling. I think someone got hurt. My heart leaped. Ethan and Mia. I hurried to the door and pushed through the gathering onlookers. The scene was chaos. Customers surrounded the entrance to Mia's boutique, waving clothes and screaming for refunds. I saw a woman holding up a blouse that had shrunk to half its size, another showing a dress where the dye had run, staining her skin purple, a third clutching a skirt whose seam had split completely up the side. Where are they? Thieves! I paid good money for this garbage. In the center of the storm, Ethan was trying to shield Mia from the angry crowd. His forehead was bleeding. Someone had thrown something, or he'd been pushed into a display. Blood trickled down his face, staining his collar. Mia crouched on the floor, frantically gathering scattered clothes, her face swollen from crying. No one had died, unfortunately, but watching them suffer was satisfying enough. The crowd eventually dispersed when village officials, city officials, rather, arrived to mediate. Refunds were promised. The shop closed its doors. I watched from my window as Ethan sat on the curb, head wrapped in gauze, flipping through an account book with shaking hands. Mia, I heard him say, his voice carrying across the street in the sudden quiet. Where did you even get this stock? With quality like this, there's no way we can sell it. We still have 800 yuan worth in storage. Go return it. Mia's hands froze. She lifted her pale face. Ethan, while you were at the hospital, I went to look for that factory. They've already skipped town. They were swindlers. I can't find them anymore. Ethan shot to his feet. He grabbed her arm, hauling her up roughly. Didn't you say that factory was reliable? You blew all our money on their goods. Tomorrow is repayment day. The profit we just earned is gone. What do you expect me to use to pay back the loan? It was the first time I'd ever seen Ethan truly lose his temper at her. But Mia wasn't the type to accept blame. She tore her arm free, planted her fists on her hips, and shouted right back. Don't dump all this on me. Did I make this decision alone? My parents had already arranged a job for me at a state-owned factory, but you insisted on dragging me into this business. You promised we'd become a 10,000 yuan household in a year. If you hadn't been so obsessed with copying Emily and opening a clothing store, would any of this have happened? Ethan's fists clenched. His chest heaved. For a long moment, I thought he might actually strike her. Then, visibly, he forced himself to calm down. He pulled Mia into his arms, stroking her hair. All right, all right. I was too impatient. I said the wrong thing. Don't be angry, it's my fault. His voice was soft, coaxing. But tomorrow that loan still has to be repaid. Didn't you say your parents got you an introduction letter to a stay-toned factory? Let's sell that letter for cash. We'll pay back the loan and buy new stock, proper stock this time. Mia pushed him away. Her eyes narrowed. Ethan, didn't you say your family had money? That they'd support your business? Why are you asking me to sell my future for money now? I saw him freeze. Just for a second. Then the lie came smoothly. This is my parents' way of testing me. If I can make it on my own, they'll let me inherit the family business. I just need a little more time, Mia. A little more capital. In my last life, Mia had believed every word Ethan said. She'd seen the money flowing in, my money, my labor, and assumed it came from his family. She'd never questioned, never doubted, never looked too closely at where the wealth actually originated. But this time was different. This time, there was no Emily quietly funding everything. No invisible foundation. Just Ethan's lies and Mia's greed, colliding in real time. I watched Mia's face as she calculated. I could practically see the thoughts forming. His family has money, but they're testing him. If I sell my job letter, I'm giving up my security. What if he fails again? What if his family never comes through? No, she said finally. I won't sell it. Mia, I said no. She stepped back, crossing her arms. That letter is my future. My parents worked hard to get it for me. I won't throw it away on your failed business. Ethan's face twisted. For just a moment, I saw the real man beneath the charming mask, cold, calculating, furious at being denied. Then the mask slipped back into place. You're right, he said softly. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked. We'll find another way. He reached for her again, and this time she let him hold her. But I saw the crack that had formed between them. Small now, but growing. I slipped away from the window before they could notice me watching. And that is where we'll pause Emily's journey for now. If you've enjoyed walking this path of revenge and rebirth with me, please show some love by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support is the fuel that keeps these stories alive, and it would mean the world to me to have you here when we return for part 2. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next chapter.